Drive more, pay more. California floating a plan for a mileage tax in the new year to help pay for fixing its roads and its bridges. It's supposed to replace the state's gas tax. And get this, one of our free market champions, Gary B. Smith, likes the idea. The Federalist, Bree Payton, thinks we should maybe put the brakes on it. No pun intended. Gary B., what do you say? Why do you like this?
Well, I always like a usage tax, Trish. I think it's the fairest way. It's kind of like what they did in many parts around the country. D.C., where I was for many years, just had toll roads run by a private and public cooperation, sometimes just private. You're basically paying for the use of the road. The problem is, with a caveat, you talk about free market. I don't mind a usage tax, if you will, if we replace the gas tax. The problem is, most governments, whether it's state governments or federal governments, use that money for something other than paying for the highways and bridges. They put it into mass transit or build skateboard parks or some such thing. It's like becomes a government trust fund. That's what I don't like about it.
Bree, you don't like any part of this, right?
No, I hate all of it. Listen, I'm from California. My family is very frustrated at the high prices that they're being forced to pay at the pump. And, you know, the entire reason why California lawmakers are even debating this whole mileage bill in the first place is because they handed out millions of dollars in taxpayer incentive to encourage Californians to buy fuel-efficient cars. And now that a lot of Californians have hybrids, have these fuel-efficient vehicles, the gas tax isn't paying off as much as these lawmakers would have hoped, right? So they're doing this creepy, elaborate plan. Well, it's not even innovation. It's just a failure to recognize the, basic economic lesson of unintended consequences. They couldn't foresee, the unintended consequences of handing out millions of dollars in my taxpayer dollars that, I've paid to the state in years prior when I used to live there in order to encourage Californians to buy hybrids. They failed to see the consequences of that, and they're failing to see the consequences of this mileage tax. I mean, we're not talking about toll roads here. We're talking about the government devising a plan to track how many miles you drove and tax you like it's a sin tax. I mean, this is so ridiculous that we're even talking about it. If the state is unhappy...
Look,
Sorry, go ahead.
The reality is states all over the country right now are looking at this. They're all looking at hiking gas taxes. This maybe is a new way to deal with this. But, Gary, I don't like any tax hikes at all. But there may be something to what you're saying here. In other words, a usage tax. This gets back to things that we've talked about previously, privatizing highways, privatizing bridges, trying to find a more economical route to all of these in the future. You say this could work, and this might be a solution for other states?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I will grant that there's always a problem with government implementation. If they just hand the highways and toll roads and whatever bridges over to private enterprise, kind of like the original turnpike system here in the U.S. was all private, it could work. But the problem is rarely with the government raising enough money. The problem is that in California's original, and right now they're charging 41 cents a gallon in state tax. The problem is that all that doesn't go to fix the highways. Only about 60% in California goes to fix the state highways. They redistribute the rest to cities and towns and other various projects that government likes to get into. So if they dedicate it, it really doesn't even matter what they do. I like the usage tax because it's very direct. But if they said, look, this is kind of that old Al Gore lockbox, it can only go to fix the state highways and bridges, then I think you may have a solution that's at least fair.
Bree, final word to you.
Yeah, I think that that's a completely flawed analysis of what's happening here. This is the state deciding to track one's mileage and track one's behavior. I don't think it's any business of the government to know how far or how often, I decide to drive my vehicle. That's totally ridiculous that they're going to try and track that and devise this system to tax me accordingly. I think that this is social engineering, and I think that it's wrong.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to see you both. Always appreciate a spirited debate, especially on California highways.